Hello, hello. Welcome to today's episode. This is part 2 of the unspoken part of about boundaries. I did part 1, I believe, on what's the date today? The 11th, March 9th, 2026. And I realized that there is a part 2, and I didn't even realize this when I recorded the first part, but I was talking to my friend, and I've had even more experiences, and it dawned on me what exactly a boundary is, what it does, and how it's part of the healing process. And in my own journey from foster care, we'll call it from foster care to the palace, something that people respond the most to and the most listened to podcast episodes are about boundaries. And so today I have deeper context for you. And just so you know, I have some some updates of this platform that I'm using on Podbean. Excuse me. Apparently, starting on May 18th, I won't have the option to do a live show anymore. I don't know why, but I keep getting notices and emails about that, and I'm kind of bummed because I love going live. I love getting in front of a group and community of people and speaking. And believe you me, yes. Am I creating something in the background? I absolutely am, where people come and it's a paid space community, and you hire me to speak. You hire me to speak to your community. And it's where I bring what I bring here on my podcast. Yes. And it's also, where people come and they keep getting to press play and transform and walk in one way and walk out totally transformed. And so I don't have it all planned out yet, but just so you know, it is something beautiful is getting created. And I don't ever want to just prematurely shout out what I'm doing with because things have been on a different path than I envisioned. I'm in a season where God is definitely having me take a step back and pull back. I just heard a message that goes in line with messages. This is the third time within a week time span or a couple week time span where I've heard the same similar message about doors, old doors, using keys to open up old doors. It's not going to work, right? Trying to fit in spaces that you don't fit in. It's also those old doors, old ways of doing things. And when I heard it for a third time, I'm listening. And God can speak through people. God can use people to get our attention, sometimes in a good way and sometimes in a way that we don't like. So today I decided, I said, okay, God, I'm listening. You have my full attention because obviously you need me to hear something. You need me to understand something. So I'm listening. And so he has been totally redoing how I have been operating all the way up until here. Now, I realized too that old ways, old doors don't work. And so if we are not stepping into new places, if we're not stepping into new experiences to get new evidence, if we are not experiencing new things, new skills, new ways to handle things, then we will unknowingly keep ourselves on that hamster wheel that we really want to jump off of. So I have been creating new evidence of what it's like to set boundaries in my life with people who respect them and people who aren't reacting and people who aren't becoming abusive gorillas on like abusive people that I thought were friends, people like I realized that there is new evidence and I've been walking in that. I've been experiencing that. Also, boundaries. are a mirror. They hold up a mirror to the person. And as I brought in the first part, boundaries are a menu. They teach people how to treat you and what will continue to give access. But a lot of people look at boundaries as a weapon, as terrifying act, or personalize it and think that people are telling them that they suck, or or they hear things that aren't being said, they misinterpret things, and so they react instead of respond. And it's like, first off, if this is how you are going to act when I set a boundary with you, it is a sign. So the unspoken part about boundaries today is you're going to walk away with some of the signs. And I'm not really going to give you a roadmap in here, but I am going to create an opportunity for you to get a roadmap, okay, to download and keep for yourself. And it is on the topic of boundaries. It's something that I coined. It's the boundary boss method, something that I have been creating. And I don't have a link today, but don't you worry. I will get that to you when I have it created. One of the parts about boundaries that people don't talk about, the unspoken parts, is how do we, like, not how, but we as boundary setters also get to sit in the discomfort and uncomfortableness of when people go radio silent when you set a boundary with them. I have watched this happen. And then it's not up to me to go and make people feel comfortable and manage their emotions like I used to do, which is so exhausting. I used to manage people's emotions and I used to soften the blow of the boundaries because growing up in foster care, my caretakers and also who were predators exploded and I wasn't kept safe. I was mishandled, mistreated, abused. And so I thought I was taught that I'm not safe. So I brought that into my adult years. And believe you me, it has been a journey. And I look at the people who I have been setting boundaries with and over time. And then I look at the people who I have been setting boundaries with who respect them and who respond in a manner that tells me that, you can continue having access. But up until this point in my life, the people that I was setting boundaries with would turn into people that caused me to go into like defensiveness and protect myself and explain myself. And it's like, wow. And the people knew what they were doing. People know what they're doing. I don't excuse people's behavior. So I realized that they're not my friends. Meaning, if they're going to treat me rudely and turn into a victim and personalize my boundaries, then their access gets removed and it's up to them. Now they can, if access is something that I choose to give again based on how they've changed and how they've learned, it's a learned skill to develop emotional intelligence to know how to handle someone's boundaries. What I have found though, and this is just a fact, and I don't know the percentage, I just know because I am talking also mainly about myself, that many folks who are, on the end of receiving the boundary, there's a lack of emotional intelligence because people don't know how to handle a boundary because it's been taught that boundaries are a weapon, that you're in danger. Warning, impending doom. Warning, I'm going to die. Warning, this person doesn't like me. Warning, let's personalize it. Warning, I got to keep myself safe. Warning, this person is telling me that I suck. When in reality, the person isn't saying that. It's just what we're hearing it in. The level in which we hear and perceive things is not the boundary giver's problem. It is up to us to do the research and find out why we are reacting to someone's boundaries. I have also found out recently that when people know that they are about to lose access for good, they freak out. I'm telling you, they literally freak out. And it's like, you are showing me that you can't handle my access. You can't handle access. So therefore it's removed. But if I have already set the tone, if I've already given the boundary, if I've already let you know what's going to happen from this boundary because you choose to, because if it happens again and I've already told you and then you do the same thing again, I'm sorry, but access denied. You will get removed from the security people. Menu will be revoked. Access to my lounge will be revoked. You will have no access ever again. It's not a mean thing. But when I said that, it's probably like, oh, you are so mean. Actually, it comes from years of abandoning myself where I no longer feel bad for setting up boundaries that let people know, hey, if you do this again, access is gone. Because I paid the cost. I paid the price of abandoning myself just to keep the peace. And guess whose peace I was keeping? Theirs. I was keeping their peace. Now, I'm going to say this as a disclaimer because there are people that are genuine, that mean that don't mean harm, that aren't doing things out of, intentionality. They don't know that they are doing whatever it is they're doing, but it's not up to them to know your boundary if you haven't set it. It's not up to them to guess. There's a lot of, you see that on like the playground in high school, right? The manipulation game. Well, you should have known this. And it's like, but I didn't because you didn't tell me. So we as boundary setters have a responsibility to learn the skill of emotional intelligence so that we can speak and say what needs to be said. But also we have a responsibility to learn the skill in setting the boundary because there's ways that you can set it. And if you come across as I'm going to say, disempowered person, then you might unknowingly drive people away. So it's one thing to when you like, there's different ways to set a boundary, right? There's no perfect way. If you're looking for a perfect way, this is not for you, right? But there is no perfect way. We're not Jesus. Even Jesus set boundaries. The word boundaries, I don't think I've ever seen in the Bible itself. But the topic of boundaries is in there, right? So, and it is because I had to start looking this up and when I started my boundaries journey. And so, but if I were to speak in a harsh tone, a rude tone, sound all mad and everything else, like if I didn't check myself, there's a rap song, you better check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? I don't know the rest. All I know is that part. So we as boundary setters have a huge responsibility. We set the tone, and that means we need to process what's triggered us and activated us before we respond. There's power in pause, power in the pause. Taking pause is essential. I think this could be definitely a masterclass. I'm not going into full detail because you're going to get the details in that class. But I will say this. The unspoken part about boundaries is we fear the reactions and responses of people. And so sometimes we hold that all in. But what if I told you that holding in what needs to be said can cause dis-ease? It can cause sickness. It can cause a nervous system disruption. It can cause us to harbor bitterness and anger and frustration. And it can cause us to unknowingly keep corrupt company that needed to go or needs to know where you stand. By the way, a boundary tells people how to treat you. And it's not rude. It's not mean. We have got to stop looking like if we are on the boundary receiving end, we have got to get to a place where we stop viewing boundaries as detrimental, as harmful. Oh my gosh, they hate me. They don't like me. No, a boundary lets you know how to continue having access with somebody. It lets you know how to treat them. It lets you know what they're available for. It lets you know what they don't tolerate, what they tolerate, and what they don't tolerate. One of the hardest parts, though, is saying the boundary and being cool with that and letting the person decide whether or not they how they respond. One of the biggest indicators for me that I know that people get to stay and continue having access is those who respect my boundary without questioning me, without getting defensive, those who don't personalize my boundary, those who listen and take into consideration, but also people. I remember recently I set a boundary with a person that had access removed. Not once, but twice, because we had had the conversation and she chose to repeat the same pattern again after we had a conversation and everything was laid out on the table. And so she showed me that she couldn't maintain access. And I remember she wanted to have a conversation with me, but her conversation was filled with defensiveness and filled with defending herself, filled with blaming me, pointing the finger at me and not taking responsibility. And it's like when I said we can have a conversation like adults, because she was starting to treat me like rudely, not an adult. I said, when you're ready, we can have a conversation like adults. But what I forgot to mention is my boundary isn't up for a conversation. We can have a conversation about what has happened, but in reality, I don't really need to have a conversation with you because I already have had the conversation. And if you expect me to have a conversation with you so you can tell me what you don't like about my boundary and you can defend yourself, that's not the type of conversation I'm available for. And I didn't mind removing access again because now I have peace. I didn't have peace. And it's also a lesson for me, for someone who's setting boundaries. I have been setting boundaries unapologetically now, and it feels good. I have new evidence. Growing up in foster care, though, I had to survive for safety. I had to I had to fight for my life. Survival mode. This is the part of my story that I probably didn't even realize, that having to stay in that mode of keeping myself safe so that I can live and try my best to keep out of harm's way, it was not fun at all. And I know nobody's saying, "Oh, I'm sure that was so fun." No. There was nothing good about it. It was exhausting. I was exhausted looking over my shoulder in certain places. The system put me in 2 group homes because they said I was troubled. I was like, I'm a freaking 10-year-old kid, 11-year-old kid who's been abused the first 10 years of her life, removed from her parents before she was 1 year old. How do you expect me to feel? Happy? You want me to conform to your set of rules? Well, that's not going to work if you can't understand trauma. The system has failed many kids. They failed me. They failed to keep me safe. So when I was in these group homes, I had to be under, I had to, I had to stay on all the time. I couldn't rest. That's exhausting. So over time, my body has taken a toll. But setting boundaries has been the healing key that I've needed so that I can keep going. And I'm actually, it's part of my healing journey. I was talking with a friend yesterday and, letting her know, I'm like, hey, I'm in saying the thing that I want to say without sugarcoating and watering it down is also a healing thing for me. And I'm not going to go backwards. I refuse to. I'm going to keep going forward. So the unspoken part about boundaries, part 2, is what happens when you set them. What happens when the people that you set them with don't respond the way that you thought? And what happens when they react and cause you to be the bad guy and won't take accountability, won't take responsibility, but beg you to stay in your circle? And it's like, no. And what about when you go to set the boundary and people go radio silent, don't respond? Then what happens when you're left with sitting in the discomfort and the uncomfortableness of it? Do you fix it? Do you go and try to have more of a deepened conversation to explain yourself? I used to do that because I used to manage people's emotions. But when you set the boundary, it is not up to you to decide how people respond or receive your boundary. That's where we get caught in a trap. And it's important for us to know when to let people respond accordingly. Give people time to rise. And this is where having a great therapist can help. Having a great community of people can help, a coach or a mentor, making sure that you're not doing this by yourself. Because let's face it, setting boundaries is hard. I remember when I started setting boundaries with my biological family, it was so hard because well, my biological family, my birth mom and my older sister, they mistreated me very horribly because I would do my best to set boundaries, and I was verbally abused by both, emotionally abused. And it was like, whoa, what the heck? Because when I would try to set boundaries, they didn't like it. And so it's one of the reasons why I set boundaries with my birth mom. Of She passed away, was it last year? The year before? I just remember it was April 8th. Well, anyway, I think it was 2025. Yeah, 2025. April 8th, 2025, I believe. And I set a boundary with her right before Christmas of 2022, and I cut off access because it got to the point where almost every conversation had turned into a verbally abusive interaction, and it wasn't on my end. And I finally realized in my 40s I deserve to be treated with kindness and respect, regardless of who you are. I deserve that. I don't and I don't. I am not. And this is what I also started learning. Just because I am a Christian woman who loves God and believes in Jesus, just because I forgive easily, and just because I'm kind, and just because I'm connective and magnetic, does not mean I am required to give access to people who are abusive. Oh, no, thank you. I was taught that, though, in foster care my whole life. Predators that raised me, that my abusers, my first abusers, well, first were my birth parents by choosing alcohol. Alcohol was their vice. That's what they chose, and that is why me and my siblings got removed. And so we were placed in an abusive home for the first 10 years. So our predators taught us, but they also carried a Bible. They said they loved God and that they loved Jesus. And I'm not here to judge that part of people. All I know is there's a whole side of abuse that happens in the church, and also with people who, you know, look good on the outside, but behind the scenes. And so I was taught early on that my voice wasn't powerful. I was taught early on that my boundaries didn't matter because I wasn't kept safe. I was mishandled in a lot of ways. But here is the healing power that takes place when you take your life back and you say no more, and you start setting boundaries like you've never set them before. And it takes work. It takes practice, right? It takes that courage. It takes getting in a community of people. I am going to drive this home till the good Lord takes me home. You need to be in a community of people that can support you, that you can thrive, that you can share the vision together, that you can grow together, that you can be on a path and have goals and go after your dreams, and also get the healing that you need. Now, I will say, in my coaching world, I'm not a therapist. So having a really good therapist, right, is amazing, going to help. But I will say that this part in my life, in my late 40s, I know I just aged myself, but hey, I'm learning. I'm healing. My body is healing. My mind is healing. My soul and my spirit is healing. And the younger versions of me, the younger parts are saying, thank you. Thank you. But it hasn't been easy. It's been freaking grueling. It's been hard. It's for me, sometimes it has felt like a terrifying life or death situation, like I'm being chased by a group of hungry lions, okay? And it's not for the faint of heart, but it can be done. If I can do it, I know that you can do it. Yes. And I teach more of the how inside my spaces. And yeah, because let's face it, boundaries are one of the number one things in why people stay in burnout because they're not setting boundaries. They're allowing people to run them ragged and treat them as vending machines and fortune cookies and a charger. Last I checked, we're not a charger. Last I checked, we're not a vending machine. Last I checked, our energy and access is expensive, which I talked about in part one. In fact, go listen to part one. It talks about a menu. So this is part two. And I want to say thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. I am bummed though that beginning of May, I know May 18th, this platform is cutting off the live feature. I love the live feature because it helps me to interact with people and connect, and they can interact at the same time. So I'm going to find a new way to still get my message out there to the world with my podcast, but I'm going to find a way to invite amazing people into my world so I can get in front of people live because that's where the energy's at. That's where the action and the fire is at. So if you like my podcast, it's the doorway to what it's like being in my world. So, and this is where you get like the what and the why, and you get more of the how and the accountability, and you get held, you get celebrated. That's in my paid spaces. So that I am in the process of creating. Thank you so much for being here. I am enjoying right now, though, in this current season in my life, I have set up and enforced boundaries so that I can heal. And getting diagnosed with, a couple with a viral infection has not been energetically fun. So I'm just going to continue doing this. And when I have that thing created, don't you worry,